The Last Wish is probably one of the best fantasy books that I've ever read, and I really don't think that should come as a surprise to anyone. With two fantastic games and now a Netflix series on the way, I kind of understand why so many companies are trying to turn this source material into a different form of media. It's phenomenal. If you somehow manage to miss the wake The Witcher has made in the last 4 or 5 years, this book is a great introduction to it. It's essentially a series of short stories that follow Geralt of Rivia, a monster slayer and our grayish anti-hero in his travels. While there's like a loose plot arc that linked together those short stories, it's much more about steeping yourself in Andrzej Sapkowski's world and introducing the reoccurring characters of the series. And that's where this book really shines. The characters are so good. Andrzej Sapkowski just has this way of showing you these incredibly distinct characters without ever giving you this epic, biblical long paragraph of what color their hair is. It's short and sweet, and yet somehow is able to get more detail into these short, tiny paragraphs than most books do in their entire length. And the whole thing's only like 300 pages. It's a third long as most books. The stories with Geralt and Dandelion alone would be worth purchasing, but then you add in Yennefer and Renfri and Calanthe and all these amazing characters that it really almost doesn't even matter what happens in the book. There's so many interesting individuals that you want to see interact and see what happens when they clash or work together or just experience any situation that it's just riveting. I'm getting shorter with every cut. I keep knocking my chair back in excitement. The world building definitely deserves praise as well. The setting is Tolkien-esque with elves and dragons and dwarves, but they're never exactly as we've come to know them, and that's partially due to the Slavic and Polish mythology influences on the book, but also this theme of a moral gray when it comes to the relationship between man and fantasy creature. The villagers would rather keep the bridge troll around because he maintains the bridge. Sure, they have to pay his toll, but it would be more expensive to get rid of him, so they coexist. That theme of how humans would realistically interact with a fantasy world is really well explored in this setting, especially because Geralt is a witcher. He's not quite human and not quite monster, so we see the perspective through someone who's forced to walk that line between worlds, and it makes for a really incredibly interesting read. Now, the book isn't perfect. If you're someone who loves to have those Tolkien-level worlds where there is literally everything mapped out and broken down to the finest pieces, that's not really here. It's much more preferring storytelling over world building. The world building is good and the setting is interesting, but it definitely plays a back seat compared to the characters, and that's kind of the point. It's a storytelling, not a world building book. And some people may or may not prefer that. Now, I didn't want to dissect every part of the story because it is relatively short and you can't really do that without spoiling a lot of it. Instead, I just wanted to give a brief overview of the story, and if you like something that is a little more gritty and has sort of this realism to it while still being Tolkien-esque, I think you'll find it as a great introduction if you are not into fantasy reading, or distinct enough that it'll be different from all the things that you've read before and you'll really enjoy it. So definitely recommend picking up this book, especially if you're a fan of the Witcher series, you played the games, or are just interested in what you saw from the trailers of the Netflix series. Great read, and I hope you check it out.
Right, man. Let's end on that. Or else I'll never be able to look you in the eyes again.